Hey everybody, it's Christian Buckley doing another MVP Buzz Chat, and I'm talking today with Habib. Hello.
Hey Christian, how are you today?
It's great to see you. And we were just talking about the weather up in your part of the world. For folks that don't know you, who are you, where are you, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Habib Mankal. I'm a MVP from Ottawa, Canada. So this is my 10th year that I was actually awarded. So, um, up in Canada, we get a lot of snow and ice
I've
for a
heard that. Yep.
long period of time throughout the year. So fortunately, we're actually getting some very, very nice hot and warm weather up here right now. So.
I know it's been weird. I've got a daughter that's in Minneapolis, and we had the last two winters when I was in Salt Lake. I'm in Dallas now, uh, where our winters were harsher than theirs up in Minneapolis. And I think, and I think we traded some weather for a while with over your part of Canada as well. And we like look at the warmer temperatures, and we were getting buffeted by the North Pacific, snowstorms that would pound the Seattle area and then drop even more over in the Rockies. And yeah, just crazy. But
It totally varies. I mean, earlier this year in February, I think we got 70 centimeters in 2 days of snow. So,
it's insane. I know
yeah,
some records were broken in Utah, so it'll be an adjustment here. I'm already adjusting. It's hot here. I don't know if you knew that in
yes.
Dallas. But hey, so do you consider yourself, because when you started, did you also start as a SharePoint MVP when you came into the program?
No, so yeah, that's interesting. I actually was a Skype for Business MVP
Okay.
first started out. Yeah, so SharePoint was not my space. I generally, I mean, I have some knowledge and I work some, projects in that kind of area. But yeah, initially I started out doing Skype for Business deployments. A lot of people were interested in moving their telephony, and even if not, they wanted to at least provide a nice unified communications experience, video conferencing, desktop sharing, all that kind of stuff to their customers. So that's basically sort of how I got into the game. Yeah.
Well, as we were sitting here before we started recording, we're talking about, telephony backgrounds, because I worked for the phone company in California and have that background. I always remark that now in the collaboration, especially the team space, there's kind of that line of demarcation between the collaboration side of teams and the unified communication side of teams. And it's easier for the UC folks to pick up the collaboration than it has been for the collaboration folks to learn the telephony and UC side of the house. So it's always good to know who the UC folks are in the
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, although the collab side is definitely interesting too, because it has a lot of the other things that, we might, from like the voice background side of things, around like the governance and information protection and taxonomy and all that other kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, if you don't understand the voice and the codecs, and it's kind of funny, like, in the Skype for Business world, you kind of needed to know a little bit of everything, right? You need to know, databases, SQL databases, you needed to know firewalls, you needed to know networking, a little bit group policy management, deploy
right.
GPU. So it was kind of like a really cool knowledge, right? Like knowledge base that you're taking in, because you kind of have to know like a little bit of everything, because you have to work with like the different engineers or from the different departments to get them to do the work that you're looking for, right?
So I just a little bit again, kind of bragging rights here, but no, in the early days of the Skype for Business MVPs, and there's quite a few that I talked to over the years that had similar backgrounds. Where just summers, I had a friend with a business where actually we were pulling wires, so I understood a lot about going in and actually installing phone systems in buildings and what was required on the back end for that. It's just again, I didn't do that part of for a living, but I helped out with my friend's business. I helped out with a lot of the folks. It's interesting that the folks that did that kind of work, that side of IT, for a couple companies that I worked for, went kind of two paths. They went into the unified communication space, or they went into DevOps. Because
Oh,
remember, like all of that was used to be owned just by generically IT, but it was the
right.
people that were the break fix that could build a PC, repair your PC, that managed all the devices, and also were pulling cables through walls and ceilings to set up the space, to set up the office.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Totally
Well,
agree.
that's hey, I mean, what? So you started in the Skype space. So what now is your? Well, actually, let me back up. I was going to say we'll get to the like what you're doing, what you talk about, what you're passionate about now is. But how did you become an MVP? What's your origin story there?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a local user group here in Ottawa. I met current MVP who's on a podcast with me. His name is Curtis Johnstone, and essentially, he's been an MVP for quite some time, and I was interested in becoming one and stuff like that. In the sense of not just becoming an MVP, but it was more around like, hey, how do I get involved in community? How do I start doing and speaking and stuff like that? And so they kind of gave me my first opportunity at the local user group here to say like, okay, here's how you can speak and stuff like that. And then, you start meeting other people, and then, the community started getting larger, and then you started seeing like the online postings of like, hey, like the SharePoint Saturdays and whatnot. And then the SharePoint Saturdays were starting to move into kind of like the M365, because it was kind of like the BPOS transition to Microsoft 365. So it was still using Skype for Business in the cloud because they weren't using Teams. So I was having some discussions around like, hey, how do you do the migrations from on-prem to cloud, and how do you enable all these different features and stuff like that? So that's kind of like how things sort of went, right? Like getting into the community and started speaking. It's like, you just, and I was actually blogging at the time too, because I found it very interesting that like, um, for all the speakers that I was meeting and the things in the blogs that I was reading, it was like, I kind of felt like I wish, and that's why I continue to speak now, but it's like, I wish there was people like, you and I and all the other speakers and bloggers when I was coming up, graduating from college, not really knowing anything and stuff like that, to be able to have like blog articles and stuff
Yeah.
like that to read. So I kind of feel like I'm giving back in that particular sense, like that there's people that were like me coming up in out of college and stuff like that don't really know anything, and they're wanting to learn more. And it was a lot of the stuff back then was like break fix. It was like, this is broken, how did I fix it? It's like,
Yeah.
because it was on-prem, right? So
Yep.
it was less of the cloud stuff, although I think you can break stuff in the cloud depending on policies that you set up or whatever.
I think
So
for a lot of the events, this, and I've talked about this all the time, it's like, but yeah, when I got started, my first SharePoint Saturday was not quite I guess about a year after it was the concept was created. My first one was in November of 2009. And I got the format. I had organized community events and been part of user groups and things for years. But that idea of to go and community driven versus sponsors, that was a little bit new, and that was great. Um, and a lot of it was just people sharing, hey, here's what I'm working on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be finished. But so much at that time was, I'd say, the percentage of speakers, probably 50% were the IT pro, maybe 30% or more were developer, like hardcore developer topics. And then 15-20% were end user related power user topics. And where it's now, it's flipped around, and it's, I would say, more power user, end user focused content, maybe 40 to 50%. And then IT pro and dev is the smallest, because we don't own the servers anymore. We're subscribing to services so we can focus on the business problems and those stories, those use cases. How do I actually use it more? And so that's changed. Like for the same, it's been, I don't talk about You get, developers and even on the admin stuff. I do some admin level topics, but most of it is how do I get the most out of it as a end user, as a power user.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because now, like you're saying, I think you can kind of have like the best of both worlds, right? Where there's a lot of end user experience because of how Microsoft is making changes all the time, and how do you keep things up to date, and how do you implement kind of like business processes, like you can use the automation tools and stuff like that that they have. And then there's still like a significant amount that you can talk on the IT pro side, right? Like how do
Yeah,
you configure this and how do you configure that? And what are the, I don't like to call them best practices, but what are good practices, right? That you
right.
implement in your organization, from just a general M365 perspective, whether it's governance or security or stuff like that, right? Because, you want to allow your users to be able to do as much as they can, with little, I guess, IT involvement in an enterprise, right?
Yeah,
But at the same time, you just don't want to just have like the doors kind of wide open, like here, do whatever you want, right? I mean, so you kind of have to put on some, guardrails per se.
yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think you made a great point too. That it's the well, I was thinking this, and you kind of supported that. It's a that I don't care for the best practices term either. That it's like, no, here's what worked for me in this scenario, and that's why, because I think it'd be discouraging to think like, well, what would I have to add into this? It's like, well, you have your personal experience, you have your background, you have you're interested in creating content, giving back to the community. Share your story, your experience, your path, what worked for you. I mean, on the technical aspect, it may be the same solution, but your voice, your style, your your lived experience, your industry, all those things might be different than this other content that you're pointing to. I'm not saying just go and uh, duplicate what's out there, but with your content. But again, share your story, but share that story, because now I've had this discussion with MVPs for years and years and years that there's it's not that we have a problem where we have too much content. There's a lot of content. There's more content being created. I love this stat too, like on a daily basis, or I guess is it monthly basis? Then I think, because Jeff Teeper always shares this at various conferences. For years, he said this. He says there's more content created last month than there was for 50 years of the internet, of the 50 years of technology combined before it. That's the exponential growth of content that's being created. So as part of that, is it responsible to be throwing more scenarios, more blogs, more videos and things that are out there? It's like, yeah, because we still have our unique, fingerprints on things, our experiences, which might relate to somebody more than everything else that's out there. And so, plus it's an extension of our brains. That's how I look at like my blog, my videos. It's more of an extension of helps me catalog and remember what I've learned, what I've shared.
Yeah,
So
and sort of and keep up to date too, right? Because I mean the way things that are happening now, like it's always changing. Like you log into a portal and you're like, well, okay, well, there was something there, now it's not there, and or it's moved here, kind of thing. So you're
yeah,
always kind of keeping up to date too. What I've also found too is just from speaking at these events for all these different years, there's like you were saying, there's a lot of experience from all these individuals, and I found that a significant amount of the speakers are like independent for the
mm,
like there's quite a bit of them that are independent or were independent, or work for companies that are solution providers and stuff like that, where they go and integrate at different companies and stuff like that. So they gain a lot of that different experience because you're working with all these different companies, and you're like, why are you doing it that way? Like you're used to because you have knowledge from like all these different projects and different customers that have done implementations and such, and then you're like, okay, well maybe maybe we shouldn't do it this way. Let's try doing it this way because, these are my reasonings and here's how I would back it, kind of thing. Right. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like solidifying sort of what you were saying, right? It's like, we've all have these different experiences. And I think that we should share them, right? I mean, it's,
What are your primary topics right now? What are you most passionate about? What have you been speaking on, presenting on lately?
So a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. I did earlier this year, I was doing some sessions around Microsoft Places, doing the deployment back, because that was kind of like a new tool that was coming into the industry from Microsoft and stuff like that. Where was I? I was in the UK at Commsverse in June.
Great event.
Yeah, it always is. I did a session with Michael Lamontagne, another one of my co-hosts on the podcast, about Microsoft Teams telephony, like deep dive, like 400 level, like what are some tips and tricks and gotchas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In September that's coming, I'm speaking with Curtis at Quest Tech about some fundamentals around Copilot, and then ESPC, where I'll see you later this year in Dublin. I'm doing a boot camp with Mike Matarani around Microsoft security, compliance, and identity fundamentals. Very cool. Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of a different, like a little bit of everything kind of thing.
I'll have to check in with you on that. I'm doing a governance topic, so we should figure out when. I really need to go in and do that. I try to do that to say who's doing related topics when during the week, so I can kind of point people, hey, if you're interested in this topic and more, here's
Absolutely.
What we'll do next, make some recommendations. But
yeah, so we're on the pre-day, so yeah, we'll definitely.
Oh, perfect. Well, then I need to share what I'm doing, and so you can point people to my session. Selfishly, I won't forget to reach out to you for that.
Shameless plugs, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Well, it's great. And then finally, kind of on the community side of things, I know we were talking about this a little before we got started. Is I know that as MVPs, we all get approached on a regular clip by people that are like, how do I get more involved? Like, what's your general advice to somebody that is looking to get involved and do more, whether that's to pursue an MVP? There's nothing wrong with pursuing an MVP.
Yep.
But I always say, like, number one rule of going down that path is stay humble. There's some. I know there's some issue with that with some folks that are MVPs currently, but for the most part, it applies. Like, Microsoft looks for that, people that have a little bit of humility out in the community, doing it for the right reasons. But what's your advice?
I think the first thing is like, hey, if you have content, share it, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to all these different events to speak and stuff like that. And I don't know if a lot of people know that a lot of us speakers pay out of our own pocket to go to these events because we're passionate to share our knowledge, right? So that's one thing I think, that I would, for newcomers that want to, like, hey, you don't have to be, or spend financially to go to these things and to share, right? Yeah. There's different ways, right? You can create like LinkedIn articles, right? You can create LinkedIn videos. You can create like YouTube videos. All this is from the comfort of your own home, right? And you're just publishing like, hey, maybe this is a specific topic that I want to cover, or maybe I want to walk through a different scenario or something like that. So maybe there's a GitHub repo or PowerShell script that you created that would be like might benefit somebody else, in the future, and you throw it up on GitHub and you share it, right? And just, I think the big thing is obviously when you want to get it out there, be sure to include all the appropriate hashtags so that you get more reach, right? So that people start seeing like, hey, Christian's creating all these new articles or all these new content or whatever, right? So I think it's just share, right?
Yeah.
Your first thought or your mindset should be like, yes, maybe, okay, if that's kind of like the vision, or maybe the thing that you want is trying to achieve an MVP award, but your main passion should be, I want to share information that I have in my head with other people. Whether or not that achieves or I get an MVP award out of it because Microsoft sees like, hey, Habib is doing a lot of community work, and he's publishing here and here and here. That would be great. But your main concern should be like, I care about sharing my information and sharing my knowledge.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always say the same thing. People that watch this series, they know this. I said, I would be doing the stuff. I was doing this stuff before I was an MVP. I'll be doing the same stuff after I'm an MVP. It's this is the stuff. This is just the way that I operate. So, I think long gone are the days when hoarding information gave you power. Like it does not. It's the opposite these days. The people that are more open and share that their knowledge are the ones that rise the fastest within their organizations and certainly within the community.
Yeah, people will want to engage with them, right? Because I mean, we always say it in our sessions and stuff like that. Like, if you see me walking around like anywhere, please stop me and chat with me. You know what I mean? I'm not above that at all. Like, I mean, I would love to.
We're all approachable, right?
Yeah, we love to talk. So it's
right. That's one thing that's consistent across. I can say 100% of MVPs are approachable. Like, they would love to connect and reach out. So.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Habib, really, I hope when I see you before December, I'm sure we haven't talked about any other events. Are you doing the Dallas event here?
I am not doing that.
Okay. Well,
I think that's next month, and I will.
A couple others. Yeah. Well, I don't know when it is. I have to go look at that, but I'll be up in Minneapolis. Are you doing the Twin Cities event?
No, because I have the Quest one that's in Minneapolis.
Okay. Anyway,
then we have the Ottawa event in October, so it's kind of like sort of back to back.
I might have to wander up for that one. That might be doable, but unless I'm in South Africa, that is a possibility. So
I will give you got to pass.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and plus to go down for 2 weeks and hit 3 events, so
yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, hey, really appreciate it. Of course, I'll have, if you want to reach out and connect with Habib, you find all the information in the blog post out on YouTube. We'll have all of his details out there, and we'll see it. I'm sure I will see you before December, but if not, December. All right.
Talk later.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.